like going through these somewhat hypothetical, sometimes real situations. In terms of it preparing you to find a career in consulting, it will vary from school to school, of course. I would look, as you're looking into programs, I would look to see, hey, does this school have any alums at firms that I'm interested in working at? Carnegie Mellon doesn't place that many people. I saw like 1 or 2 people, and I said, okay, it's possible. Like it's happened before. It's not out of the realm of possibility. But a lot of what business school does is it gets you up to the plate. These companies, while they do take applications from other sources, they do a lot of recruiting on campuses because they can focus that way. So it gets you up to the plate, and then there are tremendous resources. Do a little bit of due diligence about what sorts of activities the consulting clubs do at the schools, and again, look to see, are there people who are coming out of this program going to firms that I would want to work at.
I mean, the most important thing is business school is going to build your network, right? Your return on investment, like you should probably figure out how much it's going to cost you, what you're losing in salary, and see whether or not it's worth it for you, right? Because business school is getting more expensive, and that's just the reality of it. But at the same time, there's also some of these things that you can't necessarily quantify. You're going to build a network, right? It also opens doors to not just consulting. So I'm going to open up a little more broadly and say, 5 years down the line, say you got your dream job at BCG or Bain. Within 5 years later, you realize, oh my God, I made the wrong choice. Business school does afford you the opportunity then to make a switch, right? So you can't just think about, if you go into business school with the mindset, I'm going to go into this industry, most of the people who go into business school thinking that way, you're going to be sorely disappointed. Like, there are only so many jobs in these industries, right? But if you think of business school as a way that I can build my network so that even if I don't get that job right away, I have the people who, my classmates have gone in there, I can talk to them, eventually it'll lead to a job, or even if I get the job now, I can switch afterwards. I think that's a better mindset than going into business school thinking. So that was more of like a business school kind of thing, but if you go into business school, you absolutely have cases. Every school has a consulting club. They'll have cases that you can use, right? Because the case interviews are so important. So definitely use those cases, and if your school's consulting club doesn't have cases, consulting clubs talk to each other across different schools. They'll share cases. Like when I was at Stern, I had access to all the Harvard ones, Columbia ones, Duke ones, Tepper, right? So I had a bunch of them, right? So in preparing for consulting, you'll learn that, and because consulting is so interpersonal, your interaction with your classmates is going to help you because you're interacting with different clients every day, and learning to interact with different people, people you like, people you don't like, that's going to go a long way in helping in your consulting career, at least.
I have another question. So I can see that you emphasize a lot about the analyze skills.
Mm-hmm.
And at school, we study a lot about the theory.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wonder, how do you gain that skill? Because, like, do they have any training programs or anything that can help you improve the skill, the analyzing?
So I would say that most firms probably do have an orientation program, a training program. Is that true? That in your guys' experience, I'm almost positive, right? Sure. Yeah. So almost every firm is going to walk you through their start to finish process of how they view an engagement or a case or whatever they want to call it. There probably wouldn't be a training right off the bat on this is how you should analyze this, that, or the other thing, because it's such an open-ended thing within what you might be analyzing. But when it comes to like being trained in theory versus being able to do analysis, I think in some ways it'll be intuitive. Like by just going through the process of solving problems and using data to do that, you probably build a general intuition around like, this is how I'm going to set up this model. These are the inputs. These are the things I know. These are the things I don't know. This is what I'm solving for. So I don't know what field of study, what field of study are you in?
Actually, before I have a master degree in computer science, and then I changed to MBA.
Okay, yeah, so I would say, like, in computer science, you're trained theory, but you also have to do stuff with it too. So there's a time for laying out the architecture for the problem you're trying to solve, and there's a time for implementing it. And I think if you've been doing that, if you have some experience with that sort of stuff, it'll come naturally to a large extent.
Yeah, don't worry too. You're not working at the firm yet, so don't worry too much about the analytical pieces of it, because you'll learn that on the job. But for the case interviews, right, for that, just practice. McKinsey has a pretty good tutorial, or is it McKinsey or BCG? One of them on their website.
BCG.
Yeah, BCG walks you through a case, right? So use that as your first kind of like dip into like just trying to see what a case is like, because it'll guide you along. It'll actually show you what questions you should be asking and tell you whether you're on the right track or not. And then start looking at the case books. There's a pretty good case interview book, and actually you guys, I don't know if you guys have it. It's,
it's
Cracking
like
the
cracking
case.
case.
Cracking
and
the
stuff
case,
like
that's
that.
right, that's exactly, like, so at CERN they gave us all a copy of it, everybody who was applying for consulting. But if you I think you can find on Amazon like a used copy for like $4 or $5. So yeah, you like use that book, like, and then if you have if your business school doesn't have the resources, ask somebody else you may know from another business school, send them their cases, because the best thing to do for the case interviews is just, they're all structured more or less the same way, and they say they want it, and Nate, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is my sense of it. They say they want to know who you are and how you think. Really what they want to do is, they still want you to get to the right answer, right? So even though you may be a genius, if you can't get to the right answer, you don't ask the questions they want, to them it doesn't really mean much. The way to do that, to know what to ask, is by doing the different case interviews, practicing the different types that they may ask you. And that just help you prepare for the eventual interview when they start asking you and when you're actually doing the case, you know, oh, this is very similar to one I read here. This is a question I should be asking.
So for economic consulting, I would say that you don't have to do what we do before you go in there. The mentality is that we're going to teach you everything you need to know. What we do want to see is that you have an interest in learning that kind of work or doing that kind of work. So like, for example, computer science, you probably did some sort of programming. It's probably not the same programming that we're doing at our company. And that's fine, because all that we care about is that she has an interest in programming, or if you're more interested in finance, you're getting your MBA, you probably learn how to do a DCF model, maybe. The point is that it doesn't matter what you're doing as long as you're doing things that show that you're interested in the type of work, so that we can rest assured that once we bring you in, you're going to be so interested in the type of work that you're gonna pick it up and you're going to want to do it. So that's the mentality that we take with the interviews.
Sorry, I talk a lot. And this kind of goes to Nate again. We talked a little bit about, it doesn't sort of matter what school you went to, you're going to get there, things like that. I mean, how realistic is that for the likes of Bain and BCG and those guys where, they're obviously looking at, especially in the Boston area, right? So they're looking at Harvard, they're looking at MIT, they're looking at the sort of the Ivy League schools, and you're sort of, Boston College, great college, but sort of how realistic is it to jump from, BC to like an internship at Bain or something like that?
I guess the question to that too is, when you see other people, what are some of the key things you see them trying to get, at least talking to people at the firm?
What was your question?
Like how do people, students can get connected to the firm, for example?
Yeah, okay. So for the first question, I agree with you that I think the Boston consulting world can be harder to crack into than maybe other parts. Like, I'm pretty positive that if I had applied to McKinsey's Boston office for my internship, I wouldn't have even gotten an interview. but I applied to the Pittsburgh office because I lived there at the time, and I was weighing two different options of staying in Pittsburgh or Boston, and I think it would have been harder for me strictly because they can walk out the door to schools like Harvard and MIT. So that matters. I think office location does matter in terms of where you're applying. And then beyond that, I think it really comes down to, probably just finding a way to have the right conversation with the right person in the right office. It only has to work once, really.
Right.
But it is. I mean to say that it's possible, but I have no idea how possible
Right.
everything is, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right that Boston can be more challenging to crack into. Don't be afraid to reach out to people in other offices as well. If it doesn't hurt to stretch to spread your network as much as possible.
Okay.
And then your question was around how do you get to know
how
someone?
did you guys, all your friends, how did you manage to contact people and get connection? Everyone's resume looks the same, kind of, how do you get noticed?
So, back when I was applying to jobs, one of the things I really did not like was when somebody said, go network, go meet people. Okay, yeah, it's not that easy. I can't just go up to Nate in the middle of the street and say, hi Nate, I'm Moses, you want to network?
Yeah.
You just can't do that.
Now you
But-
know Nate.
But now I know Nate,
Yeah,
and now I can
network.
now I can reach out to Nate and say, hey, let's go get lunch or have a beer. But looking back at my experience so far, now I see the importance of this networking thing that they keep talking about, and I would suggest that don't wait until the moment that you're about to graduate, that you want some interviews. Start doing it as early as you can, and always start thinking about, how can I expand my network? How can I meet people? And if you get to the point where you're looking for a job and you're like, okay, now I need to network, then at that point you start talking to your friends and professors and friends of friends, and go out and put yourself in maybe uncomfortable situations that's going to give you the opportunity to meet more people. But I think definitely it's very important for you to tell your peers and talk to uncles, brothers, whatever. Hey, I'm looking for a job. This is what I'm interested in. Can you give me any feedback? Do you know anybody who would sit with me and have coffee? And it's those conversations that's going to get you an interview at Bain and BCG or McKinsey, especially in Boston.
Well, we've got Nate, so.
Yeah, you get Nate.
How about Accenture? It's pretty tough IT.
I mean, I think it's the same for all firms. You gotta know, even if you're at HBS and Sloan, you're not guaranteed a job at any of these schools, right? They are feeder schools, right? I'll admit to that, and they will hire a majority of people from those schools, but that doesn't preclude you from it, and you just have to show passion, right? I think Moses or Nate, you guys have talked about it. You gotta show passion for the firm, right? So know everything about the firm's ins and the outs, partnership structure, everything you can possibly find out about it, because that shows interest. And then find the people who try to get connections in there. And that's the only way you can get it in, because you throw your resume, you submit it online, it's going into some database, they're screening it for you, it doesn't say Harvard on it, they're going to toss it. That's the reality of it. So what you have to do is you have to network and find the people within the firm. Like Moses said, you start small, start with your friends who may not even be a full-time employee, and then try to just say, please refer me to so-and-so, and then move your way up the chain until you finally get to somebody who actually has a voice in the hiring process. And maybe that person you talk to is somebody who's not involved in the internship program at all, but they'll just offer you an internship anyway because they're a partner at the firm. So it is harder. It's even at Stern, we're not a feeder school for any of the large firms. Like BCG doesn't really come to Stern, but we still had 3 or 4 people join BCG, which was on a percentage basis better than Columbia. So, I'm really proud of that fact. Kick Columbia's ass there. But so it happens, right? Columbia is a feeder school for a lot of the big consulting firms. But those individuals, I know what they did was every single lunch period, they would be meeting somebody, they'd be emailing them, sending thank you cards. Don't don't bother them too much, but just show interest and show like, you know, I want to keep this relationship going, and eventually, you know, it'll benefit you in some way. Because even if they don't, I know one individual who wanted a job at BCG. Well, that partner said, well, I'm sorry, we're not hiring, but I really like you, so here's my friend at Bain, and Bain eventually hired him.
Oh, wow.
So you never know. But it's just talk. The more people you talk to, the better.
Come to event like this. Any other questions?
Yeah, I actually came from an academic background, and one of the things that really appeals to me about consulting is that you're doing new projects. It's not 5 years until your book is published from the time you have the idea to do the research until the thing is on the shelf. And so I wondered if what you found in terms of pace. Richard, you mentioned that this was something that you had longer engagements, but what is a longer engagement? Is it a year? Is it 2 years? Is it 8 months? Or and what was your experience about the sort of length and the variety of the projects that you were assigned to, and whether you think that's typical, or maybe it has to do maybe with your specific specialty?
Sure. So I think one of the things that I like the best about Analysis Group is that they call it like a free labor market, where you're free to find any case that you want. You do your own staffing. So I go up to, they send out a sheet every week or every 2 weeks, and these are the new cases that are coming in. This is the partner that's leading the case, and this is the case manager. And they send out to everybody. So I'm free to go knock on the manager's door and say, hey, I just saw this case, this finance case, this M&A case that just started. I know nothing about M&A, and it's in the healthcare industry, and I know nothing about healthcare, but I'm really interested and I have time. Can I join? And they'll say, sure, let's talk and
Work you in.
work you in. So it's completely up to you. The optionalities of the cases that you work in vary widely. So there's a lot of different industries that we touch, and at the same time, the length of the cases vary very widely.
Mm.
So there was one case where I worked on that we had to turn everything around within a few days.
Wow.
So it's very intense, very fast paced meetings with the experts and the lawyers just about once or twice a day. And then there's other cases that started before I went into the firm and will continue. We'll still be there by the time I leave. and the teams are vary just as much. Like there's the majority of the cases I work on are shorter term and smaller teams. So it'll be a VP, a manager, and myself, or a VP and myself. But there's other cases where it's very heavy at the bottom, heavy in the middle, and then obviously partners, there's not as many, but it's a huge team because it's a longer term case and it's going to be there for a longer period of time.
Maybe you can don't share the client, but what long term mean? Like what kind of project is that?
Just to cue you.
Is that government big?
So
Antitrust.
there's some that are, so a lot of what we do is antitrust, or there's an antitrust practice where, let's say I make bottles and you make plastic bottles as well, and we collude and we sell them to you, and so we collude on the price to be able to make more
Gouge
money.
me, yeah.
The government finds out, the DOJ finds out, it's a huge lawsuit, so it's a lot of data analyzing, understanding, did the prices spike at the time, did his prices spike at the time, so there's different types of what is the word, like monopoly and oligopoly, and there's different types of, I can't remember the word, but there's different types of something. So you apply economic theories to say, okay, in a monopoly, this is what you would see.
Right.
If they're colluding on price, are we seeing those same patterns here? And then when he lowered his prices, what kind of relationship did we see in the prices? So those type of cases that involve the government and large amounts of data and millions, if not billions of dollars, those tend to be longer term. There's also some finance work that both parties want to settle, but they obviously want to do it for different
Come out
amounts.
on top, yeah.
So those get stretched out a lot. There's a lot of mortgage-backed security cases that we work on, and those,
A few years.
we're almost to 2014, and those are still